Good evening and welcome to the Museum of Modern Art. My name is Pablo Helguera and I'm the Director of Adult and Academic Programs in the Department of Education. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to the fourth program of our One Work Conversation series. For those of you who are watching this program on our live stream, I want to welcome you as well. As part of our efforts to celebrate MoMA's recent expansion, this conversation series was created to introduce and reintroduce the public to key specific works currently on view at the museum by hearing directly from the artist about its making, the set of concerns that informed it, and its place within its artistic trajectory. Tonight, we are delighted to converse with Haegue Yang, who will discuss her installation Handles, commissioned for MoMA's Marin Atrium, a work with great personal and political resonance featuring 6 sculptures activated daily in an environment that includes light and sound. Due to recent travel impacts related to the coronavirus outbreak, the artist is unfortunately unable to join us in person as originally planned, but she has graciously agreed to join remotely, and we're very thankful to Haegue for that. She will be in conversation with our Chief Curator of Media and Performance Art, Stuart Comer, and Taylor Wash, Curatorial Assistant in the Department of Drawings and Prints. Haegue Yang's body of work, which includes a wide range of media, from collage to performance, often features everyday found objects. The artist disassociates such materials from their original context, rearranging them into abstract compositions that build upon a unique and very personal visual vocabulary. She frequently stages multisensory environments, which become meditations on things like labor, emotional connections, and dislocation, often making also references to various moments of abstraction throughout our history, as it is a case of Handles. Haegue Yang often works with recognizable motifs as well, such as the Venetian blinds. These were first seen in her work, Series of Vulnerable Arrangements, Blind Room, which was made its debut in 2006 at the Sao Paulo Biennial. This series of blinds in a new arrangement later appeared again at the Venice Biennial in 2009 and at Documenta 13 in 2012, as well as at the Tanks at the Tate Modern that same year in a version that also included performers who interacted with the sculptures in a reference to the choreography in Bauhaus artist Oskar Schlemmer's triadic ballet from 1922. The format of the One Work series is very specific. The program is set for 1 hour, consisting in a conversation and a set of questions for the artist. Toward the end of the program, we will turn it over for questions from the audience, so please do think of things that you might want to ask. At the end of the program, you are all invited to go upstairs to experience the work in person and to see the work activated in a performance that will take place at 7:45 p.m. And now, please help me in welcoming Stuart Comer, Taylor Walsh, and Haegue Yang. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone here, and hi, Haegue.
Hi.
Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to Pablo, Adelia, Jess, and everybody in the education team, as well as our AV team for making intercontinental communication possible this evening. Thanks so much. And thanks to Taylor for joining me. Taylor worked very closely with Haegue and me in the development of this project, so I'm glad she could join us this evening as well. So just a quick bit of background. I think most of you in the audience probably have seen the rehang here at the new MoMA. And as part of the rehang, when we launched it in October, there were several commissions by artists positioned throughout the building. And Haegue's is certainly one of the largest and most ambitious in the atrium. It's called Handles. And I think for all of us, it really signaled many of the key messages we wanted to communicate with the rehang. Notably, a more global, more transnational way of thinking, less linear and more prismatic ways of thinking about history. And I think the way that this work really does bring together a lot of different narratives and sort of synthesizes and metabolizes them into something very uniquely in Haegue's own voice, which hopefully we'll hear because it looks like we've lost the connection. And you're back, great. But it was very exciting for us to develop this project with you, Haegue, and I think the whole thought process behind it was extremely inspiring for all of us and took all kinds of surprising turns. But I think I'll throw it over to Taylor first to just begin asking some pretty straightforward questions, and then I think you'll find with all things Haegue, it starts to spiral into really interesting directions.
Thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Haegue, for agreeing to join us this way. As I understand it, part of the purpose of this series is to just sort of give the audience kind of the story behind a given work. And the MoMA installation is really such a sort of teeming, complex, multi-sensory environment, but the kind of core units of the work, at least to me, are the bell and the handle. And I was wondering, Haegue, if you could just talk a bit about why those two things were such an inspiration and became so central to your thinking around this project.
Could you hear us? Oh, we can't hear you now. Hopefully we'll have her back in 1 sec. Thank you. I wonder what others were waiting to join. I'll also mention while we're waiting for her to reconnect that the images that'll be cycling above us were mostly selected by Haegue. We threw in a few earlier works for context, which I hope we'll have time to get into with her in a moment. But you'll see it broken down very clearly into references to G.I. Gurdjieff, as you see with the Enneagram diagram, who was an Armenian spiritualist who I think has really informed many aspects of this project, including these choreographies, which had a lot to do with the activation you'll see later this evening. Also, you'll see references to Sophie Teuberarp, the highly regarded Dada artist, who was also instrumental to the smaller sort of dome-like structures in the show. And really, I think, detail Haegue's own interest in maybe collapsing some of the hierarchies between fine art and design and other disciplines. I'm going to start trying telepathy in a second. We'll see if it works. There you are. Hi. Yeah, can you see if your mic is muted, Haegue, on your phone?
Hello, do you hear me?
There you are. Now we can hear
Yes,
you.
excellent.
Okay. I was losing your voices.
Could you hear Taylor's question?
I only heard Taylor's remark at the beginning, and
Okay.
then sound disappeared.
No problem. Basically, I was just noting that for me, the kind of core units of the work are the bell and the handle. The bell, of which I know has been. Can you not hear me?
Can we hear you? Can you say something? No.
Not hearing you. Do you hear me?
Now we do.
Yes.
Sorry.
Let me try
Hello?
my phone. Maybe I'll just... We can hear you.
I don't hear anything.
You don't hear us?
You hear me?
We do.
Yes.
We just do this for a while.
Oh, I wish I know what the question is.
Hold on. I'm just going to...
I don't know what's going on.
I'm just going to... I feel like a hydra. All right.
I only heard a
Major,
little
what's
bit
up?
of that you guys were laughing, but anything else than that? Oh,
I don't think she's seeing the screen.
but you keep hearing me. I wish I know. Okay.
Yeah, okay. This will now be a WhatsApp and WebEx conversation.
Cool. maybe I just randomly talking about the bells as a materiality, how I started to work with you. I work with the bells. Somehow the bells were always around me. That was the period that I was working on so-called the light sculptures. And light sculpture is, you can imagine, simply like lots of different types of ready-made and object, mostly very cheap and trivial and everyday life object, draped and hung down on the clothing racks or IV stand. So it almost looked like, I mean, my nickname at the beginning for the light sculpture were homeless, who hold and carry all the utensils what one need for life on its own. It's kind of mobile life, and the ivy stand and clothing racks were of course on casters, and the bell was one of these numerous objects draped on the racks. But it has been for a long time just one of these many objects, and only to mid 2000 I started to use the bell as a, let's say, like primary material, or like even mono material to constitute sculptures. And at the beginning, it was a substitute of the knowledge or information that I used to make another types of sculpture that you can manually rotate, and like instead of knowledge and information, I was using bells to replace the knowledge information with the sonic effect. And then I think initiating that sonic sculptures, I started to learn about the various aspects of the bell's significance, let's say. And one of course, the significance I knew already, which became more and more vital in me, was very ancient, archaic meaning of the bell in Korea, which is very closely connected with the being such as shaman. The shaman is like shaman is like a, like medium who who connects us with this word and the other word. And there is an initiation process, because shaman is kind of born person, but still have to go through the initiation process, like recognizing one's own vocation and maybe so the initiation ritual of the shaman goes like this, that you goes from house to house and collect the metal pieces that is not in use at each household. And uh, and those metal collected from different households, like symbolize the bad karma, were melted down and then made the bell, kind of conglomerate of bell with the handles, that is like a number one personal tool for shaman to execute their rituals and dances and various ceremonial occasions. So I knew about this just by nature as a Korean person, where the shamanism and animism are still very vital. But at the same time, those knowledge and experience were not active, and in working with the sculpture, um, and using bell as a primary material, like it re-inactivated in me. But at the same time, I was also researching and gathering information about the use of bell in also European pagan tradition. from Sardinia, like island of Italy, to Black Forest in Germany, there were hundred of rituals where the cowbells and various bells are appearing, like from small to big. And we also know Hindu tradition, like how Hindu dancers are using the bells on and carrying on their body, and this rattling sound and the shake, like their body become instrument and they shake themselves in order to train our ears, but also awakening our mind. And and these were, I mean, it sounds like as if I knew from the beginning, but it came and gathered in to me and in me like over years while I'm working with this materiality. And the sonic effect and the sculptures, like the mobile sculpture or the moving sculpture, the notion of movement are very much connected. This is like a two side of the one coin. Um, and the other aspect that I was not aware, but when we got this commission, that Stuart gave me a book of the MoMA's legendary exhibition, just to make me reminds me of or aware of this notion of the machine and the relationship of the avant-garde artist with the notion of the machine. And I think it was also interesting to rethink the relationship we have with the machine, or how we sometimes also consider ourselves as a machine, as Foucault did, or many of the Bauhaus, as well as the modernist artists have done in a very utopian way. Of course, we have a today very different relationship with the machine. Um, so far, I think
Can you hear us now? Did you unplug your headphones or?
I hear you, but it's still so
It's faint.
you're breaking off. So I hear like maybe 1 second out of 2, 3 minutes.
Okay, we'll keep doing it by WhatsApp.
Oh, WhatsApp. So I maybe get the question through WhatsApp.
Yes. So we'll keep sending them.
Or
Hold on.
maybe one of you could raise the question, the other one summarize to me.
You
on-
literally just
on
asked,
text
answered the other
message
two I
that
texted, so
kind
let's
of
keep
know
going.
what is raised as a question. I'm really sorry for this technical difficulty. Talk about the handles, yes. I mean, I don't know, this is of course very stupid artist euphorism about the project, and one of most proud aspect of this project is for me to refer the title of the entire project, Handles. I mean, there were always handles on my so-called performative sculptures, but I was not somehow not so aware about the handles. There were numerous essays and writings talking about the casters underneath of the sculpture. But the handles were somehow, I think, a lot forgotten by us. Um, and I think this was like the marking within my own development, that the handle became another primary feature and very important base of the performative sculptures, because it's an interface between us, like the performer or operator, facilitator, and the sculptures. Um, and these handles are also marking the area, what we would call maybe limbo, interface, or the in-between space, and it demarcates somehow what is uncertain. At the same time, it can be described as borders. Um, and and whatever I do, I somehow tend to end up in the question about the identity and belongingness. and further can be elaborated into what we expect and think about the notion of community. And the handles are normally attached to the doors and machine and devices. It enable us to operate. Not only in terms of the functionality, there is an effect, there is an engagement, there is a will and um, result of our intention and activation, whether it is going to fail or succeed. All this accumulated action, intended action, are all like catalyzed through the handles, the medium between the drawer and my hands, and um, this communication, like grabbing something, is a very tactile experience, but it's very clear message between the thing and the person or the operator. And this communication, um, I at least see not only like functional. There is another metaphor I often use to describe the aimed communication, which is condensation. And as we all know, the condensation is the word um, to describe the natural phenomena where the two extremely different temperature coexist, and the one side of the divider between the different temperature might on that surface might the droplets might emerge, and that is a kind of the sweat and tears appearing as a proof that the temperature are maintaining their own differences, and the difference is metaphorically for me legitimated by the sweat or tear. And it is a whole the kind of holistic picture for me that there is no water escape out of the water bottle, but then through this tearing or sweating process, something actually escaped out of the bottle and then communicated with the world outside. And this crossing the border, crossing the enclosedness, and that is what we usually call communication. And often we do think the communication is a bubble, but as the condensation metaphorically demonstrate to us, I think some of the communication is most mystic, silent, muted, and secretive. However, it does communicate with us, and there is even very emotional and compelling proof come along with it. That is this droplets, and that I don't know, I'm reaching. Um, um, reaching my I'm getting a lot of questions from Stuart and Taylor on WhatsApp. It's a we have a muted communication. That's funny. Um, um, yeah, so Stuart is asking like addressing living bodies and their interface with the object. Um, and the other question is talking about Enneagram and how it related to the wall pattern. Um, the handles consist of 6 sculptures, but also it come along with its own um, environment. Maybe physically, I would call it murals on 3 different sides and the floor. So it excludes one wall, but then it's like, I think through the mural, it becomes kind of stage. Like you have, normally when we enter the theater, there is an idea of the stage, and the atrium was difficult, but such a such a attractive space for me because it can access so many different perspective, and it's like a gigantic opera house with all these different floors. You can look down. You can be like almost like a eye level to the stage, and this abstract mural made of so-called enneagram, like nine-cornered nonagon, you could say, like enneagram or nonagon shape, which symbolize the 9 different corners of uh, when it considered from the center of the circle. Is originated from like long and old tradition of our civilizational habit to make a diagram of very concrete, sometimes even philosophical narratives. So the Greek were the one who started the enneagram as a diagram symbolizing 9 different types of 9 different types of the human types. And the Gurdjieff, the spiritual guru and the kind of seeker, I would say, as well as the teacher of the dance, adopted this enneagram also to describe the way how he see the different types of people, and then get his own to preach his own way to get the balance between the different characteristics. And the what we actually have done in the atrium is we only use like black, or the other more dominating materiality is the holographic vinyl. And this vinyl has a lot of color, but at the same time, it doesn't have any color. It only reflects and breaks the light, and kind of prismatic function and effect the holographic vinyl has. So depends on the how the holographic paper is adopted, like 0 degree, 25 degree, 90 degree, 45 degree. It breaks the light in a different way. So we attached over 1,400 pieces of vinyl on the wall, and there are 4 different directions of holographic vinyls. So the whole pattern is actually nothing but a reflective surface. It thematized the light, another, um, I would say, like dematerialized material, and it gives the matrix where those sculptures can be staged and danced, but this sculpture with this very different background and heritages. And maybe Taylor and I got the summary of the question, talking about history. Maybe you guys can talk to the audience and then give me a sign that I can answer about
Okay.
next
One
question
one
about
last
consumer objects.
question. Just if I think you should talk about your history of using consumer objects and ready-mades. Can you hear me now? No. Just it's in the WhatsApp. It's in the WhatsApp, Haegue. Can you hear me at all? Nope. Did it go through? I'm not sure these are going through.
Mm.
Yeah. But I just don't know how we're going to communicate them. But
I can get my phone and help you transcribe.
all right. Can look at the WhatsApp, Haegue. Let's go ahead. If anyone in the audience does have a question, I think it would be helpful to wait. I'm seeing no luck. just see. Yeah. I mean, I can talk about it, but let's see if we can get that. Okay, here we go.
Okay. So the handles and the different origin of each object, and some of them has the shape of handle by themselves. It's I don't know. At the beginning, I thought maybe it was a funny thing to make handles to attach the handle, and all this open source heritage was interesting. I mean, there are so many different heritages and background of the elements we are using in this very holistic installation. Like we talked about the sound, but then there are also sound of bird song, like ambient sound, but also there is a music piece that is on um, once a day, 4 o'clock, 4 p.m. as far as I remember, and maybe from the shape and different heritage now I'm maybe going into the audio part of the project. So the factually I don't know if the Taylor or Stuart introduced the factual information behind the bird song. No, yes.
No,
I repeat.
we didn't.
Yes, the bird song is a straightforward record of the North and South Korean summit took place in April 2018, and I was far from the summit taking place in Korean Peninsula, and in fact I was at home in Berlin. So it was early evening. Like it started from late evening. I was following the live broadcast all the way through the whole night and until the next morning. And it was over 20 hours of the live broadcast I was following up. And at some point, when these two leaders were kind of having a personal conversation with each other on the so-called blue pedestrian bridge, all the broadcasting cameraman and the microphone have to be away. And what we could hear all of a sudden during this very exciting live broadcast was the bird song and then an ambient sound of every once in a while the cameraman was still making some pictures, and I remember that moment that in that very naturalistic ambient sound somehow was the shadow side, the negative space of this politically charged man-made space and the time, and and we brought this sound that in one hand for sure it is kind of trapped to create this natural moment, but at the same time the, the idea of the border and the peace process on the political tension, the 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 man-made narrative, what we called history or politics, etc., was also present in, even if that very absence in that recording of the human narrative was the presence of the shadow side of the nature. Somehow this dualistic, at the same time the very singular idea of singular plurality inherent in the bird song was another reminder of the historical figures such as Lee Sang-yoon, the composer, whose music we are using once a day. The piece we are performing is called Image, like image. It's composed in 1968 when he was imprisoned as the political spy, as a spy of North Korea, accused by South Korean government in 60s. Just to unpack a little bit of this composer's biography, which also will be interwoven with the bird song, like in a remote but also structurally very identical way, is also the very much about the entanglement of something that is very unlikely, but then inevitably woven through and in. Um, he has been he was born and grown up in occupied Korea by Japanese imperialistic power at that period, and he experienced the independence of the country, and he was engaged in orphanage and social work as well as resistance. He has been always wanted to be a musician, so his desire for the music and the new music and also the contemporary music as well as the political engagement has been always accompanied with each other. And he finally made his move to Europe to learn about the 12-tone music. And however, while his musical development as well as career took off and make its very stiff development, he was abducted by South Korean secret police and abducted and accused as the North Korean spy based on his trips to North Korea and his engagement in as well as the contact with North Korean people. And he was not afraid of talking about music and giving a workshop in North Korea. And however, and anyway, so he was to finish his introduction of his life. So he was imprisoned and sentenced to death, and then later reduced in the lifelong imprisonment. He was rescued by international petition and could return back to Germany and naturalized as a German citizenship because of his fear to be abducted again, etc. And this piece, Image, is inspired by the ancient royal tomb in current North Korean territory, which he visited, and that was one of his biggest artistic desire to visit this new archaeological discovery and get inspired by the 4 different deities symbolized as 4 different animals in ancient royal tomb painting. And it is very ironical that this musical piece is inspired by this trip which made him as a spy and made his life so tough and influenced forever somehow. Also, his identity was so fixed as such, and this isolation as a fixation of a figure as such, I somehow resist, and I think his life and his musical composition somehow prove the injustice and the unfairness of that fixated identity, as well as accusation. And I certainly identify his resistance to this fixed identity as such, whatever the gender, nationality, and political orientation is. Anyway, so these 2 sonic elements, like the bird song and the musical piece, is dedicated to this, I would say, the space of or demarcation of the border and the violence of fixing the identity. And I think the dance make everything much more complex. That is not a straightforward protest. It's also celebration of emancipating from this violence of fixation.
We should open it up. So if you have questions, I will happily transcribe them, and you can be part of our WhatsApp WebEx event. It's a little hard to see with the lights, but please do raise your hand if you've got a question. And if not, we'll carry on. Okay, go ahead.
I'm wondering how Haegue, I'm sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, I apologize, how she came about to know about Gurdjieff, and has she been influenced by any other ideas other than the Enneagram from Gurdjieff?
Oh, how do I know about Gurdjieff? So it was the period that I did the light sculptures called the Medicine Man and the Female Natives, and those sculptures were very much invested in looking into various ritualistic tradition from Inuit to my native Korean, etc. And one of my friend who really meditates a lot, and Swedish no Swiss Italian artist dropped this name, and I remember that I kind of knew about this Peter Brook's documentation on Gurdjieff, but I didn't really I didn't really know who he is and what is really behind. So I started to dig into him, and there is, let's say, there is a fascination about him and his way look into the thing, but at the same time there's a distance to it's not a total identification from my side. It was the same with other figures such as Margaret Duras, that there are some consent and consensus. I could see those figures confirm somehow, but I'm not a fan, or there is no total eclipse with those figures. There are a couple of things, but I think in terms of our project handle, I think what has been interesting was this Enneagram, the geometric formation of the so-called sacred dances he composed based on all his visit of ancient monastery in the region what we know today as Central Asia. And even if these sacred movements were conceived as training tool of one's body and mind, meaning it was not meant to be seen or staged on theater, the aesthetic and the geometric formation as well as the collective movement were astonishing, and so the sacred movement, the musical composition as well as the physical movement were one of the point that I was interested in Gurdjieff. And beside, I think he has the ability to catalyze things out of encounters, whether it was a monk, yogis, and mystic vagabond. I think that I also very much fascinated by and also see in myself as well. The choreographic aspect is interesting that it was not conceived to be seen, meaning it was rather introverted conception of the movement. And I think we, as an audience, I think we can feel that the certain movements are rather introverted and you do it for yourself, but that at that moment of the introvertedness is communicated to outside. I don't know how I can put in word. So when I collaborated with Jesse, who and the team of the performance media and performance department, who were all my teachers, we focused on like somehow not extravaganza movement. It has to be rather plain, the performers, or not costumed heavily, but they were really focusing on the dialogue with the object, and we witnessed how they pair dancing with the sculpture. So it is of course shared with us, but it is the choreography is rather made to make a dialogue with the sculpture, and we witness it.
Okay, I think we have time for probably one or two more if anyone does have any other questions. Otherwise, Taylor? Oh, there's just one in the back. Thanks.
I was wondering if Haegue, you can elaborate on how, when the work gets activated, the idea of choreography relates to the concept of provisional communities.
Okay, transcribed.
Maybe Taylor and Stuart can answer the structure of the activation and maybe process of working with the team and the choreographic part. I would only say that like huge thanks to the team and Jesse especially, and the rest can be maybe answered by Taylor and Stuart. Then I would answer the idea of a provisional community or a community of negative.
You.
Just to adding up the choreographic part, that let's say it sounds maybe stupid and even ironical that I have done series of performative sculptures, but I never really conceived the choreography for them. I also don't know how to do it. So this was the first time that I think the sculpture kind of got the choreography written for the sculptures. I'm not saying that it is so fixated with the choreography, but it was really like the first occasion, and there are now all the potentiality kind of unfolded through a particular conception of the choreography, and now I can even, I mean, the result out of this experience going through like learning and probing what can be inscribed as a movement to the sculpture is that I think it really changed the way I see the sculpture and handle that. I can imagine much more movement when I conceive the sculptures. So I can almost, if I keep developing, I think I can conceive the form based on imagination of a certain movement. So it's about like hegemonial relationship between what is born first, the shape or physicality or the choreography. And but I think the the handles in atrium space was such an opportunity to stage the sculpture in various way, like throw the sculpture into like different situation. And one of them was the recent performance by Ok Lee, the cellist. I mean, amazing talent, and I admire her so much as a human being as well as a musician. That her ability and the depth go into the music of Lee Sang-yoon, as well as like so open and capable to be right next to the sculpture at the same time. It was amazing. That unfortunately I couldn't be there, but I got a lot of clips, and I am already aware of her ability as a improvisational musician and composer. I think that was another crazy opportunity for the project handles to extend its ability and to be tested, um, etc. And I think I don't know that the in terms of the notion of the community, I think it will be never solved out in me. I think this the way how I engage with the notion of a community somehow maintain my struggle with that term. Struggle in the sense, as we all know, the word community contains the communality. Like, what do we have in common? The commonness can be a point, the starting point to connect with people, but it can be again also starting point to limit ourselves the in the way that we can actually connect ourselves differently. I'm personally see my role as an artist to build a community in a most unexpected place, in most an unexpected moment, and based on unexpected, almost not provable communality among us, not what we think that we know that is our commonness, and that I see somehow as my role. So this struggle will continue, through the handles, I think that it get my struggle and my attempt get certainly very much extended, and also the scale of the project and the variety of the audience is overwhelming. And there was a big fear that it's not a classical gallery space, maybe it's not serious, but at the same time, I think this notion, my engagement with this notion of the community of absence, like challenges me to be in that kind of overly ambitious place in such a big period of time. And I think I got grown or got old, I don't know. And even this muted conversation today, I don't know, I like it. I'm imprisoned by the coronavirus, which makes everybody so isolated. The other day I was on the street watching people passing by. There are barely anybody who actually walk together. Like, people are on their own. Many people stay at their home, and finally maybe have some time to internalize things. We are disconnected, but I'm sure we are not only disconnected. The same way that I don't hear you guys, but I know we are together. And yeah, I just want to thanks again for the invitation, and all the MoMA team. It has been really amazing journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Haegue. And thanks to all
I
of
don't
you
hear
for
even your clapping.
Thank you for bearing with this interesting format, and we hope you enjoy the activation. It starts in about 15 minutes upstairs in the atrium. Haegue, thank you.